So we are live. You're watching Being Human, basically. My name's Nat Rich, and I'm joined with Suzanne Yada, who I met from Matchmaker. And Matchmaker.fm is a great platform for you to be able to find podcast guests and to be able to connect with people all around the world that want to share the stories and basically just chat about things that really matter, which is the essence of what I'm doing here. And me and Suzanne had a very brief chat. I think it was was it 2 months ago
It
now,
was a month or
almost?
two ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So it's been a bit of a time since we could get back on, but we ended up going on a bit of a curtail talking about journalism and the current state of the world, and we had a few rants on it, and I thought it'd be good just to share it basically, and just to kind of have a conversation live as opposed to behind closed doors and share the thoughts, because I think our thoughts are very similar in terms of what's going on in the world right now. And so, first of all, welcome to Being Human.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
No problem at all. I was looking forward to this one, and unfortunately, we had to cancel the first one, but it's now back, and we are here. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your history with journalism?
Yeah. So, my name is Suzanne Yeda. I have been in journalism-y, media-y circles since college, really, actually before college, and through high school journalism programs and things like that. I've always been fascinated with fact finding, fact gathering, and storytelling. And so, boom, right? Journalism. And I still continue that to this day. I still do some marketing, but I'm also a songwriter, I would say, first and foremost. But my past in journalism has informed a lot of my present in not only marketing, but also just in the state of the world and the things that I care about, uh, politically, etc. So, brief CV on journalism. I have always been just about everything but the actual journalist. So I have been like a fly on the wall to some really um some would be intense and sometimes incredible um things going on. So I've been a copy editor, which basically you're correcting people's grammar. I've been a designer. I have been a columnist at one point, but I've mostly been in the web and digital. So social media, posting headlines to that, being in journalism with that, and web, social media, the whole digital gamut, and have been witness to some pretty intense stories that have developed, and I've helped guided some of those stories along, including one that ended up being a Pulitzer finalist for our investigation on seismic safety in California schools and how the state of California can't tell you if their own public schools are safe in an earthquake.
Wow.
Isn't that
Scary.
delightful? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very.
hmm hmm
Yeah. So it's keep going. Keep telling us what else you've worked
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. So, as far as I've mostly been in the print side of things, rather than broadcast journalism, which is too shouty for my tastes. Print and internet. Worked at a newspaper and have been worked at another organization called, it was an investigative reporting organization called the Center for Investigative Reporting, which now does a podcast / radio show called Reveal. Um, and during that, I worked there for about 4 years until in the journalism world, there's a thing that happens, and it's called layoffs, and they happen pretty much across the board. And I was kind of sucked up into a round of layoffs, and that's when I kind of made my switch over to marketing and then eventually songwriting. But I've always had this love and deep appreciation for quality information. And throughout my entire career, I've never really been interested in the ambulance chasing and the shouty and the matching thing. But I've also, that has informed so much of what I'm seeing, particularly now. The rounds of layoffs and the misinformation are absolutely linked.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Do you want to explain that in a little way? Some people that are listening might not kind of quite get the hint of where you're going with this, but I think you can explain it quite well.
So if I were to explain it, I feel like this is something that I actually wrote about in college as it was happening. 30-page papers on the disintegration of the business model of journalism. So the internet comes around. Before the internet comes around, we've got a physical thing that we're selling. It's a newspaper. There's paper, there's ink. We sell it at little boxes, and people put in their coins, and there it is. Once physical left and digital started taking place, no longer is that business model. And I will also be very specific. It's the classified. Once Craigslist started, decimated the newspaper industry because they were literally printing money with those classifieds, and then bam. So that started the more general ball rolling of the downgrade of the journalism industry in general. And that's when
the Craigslist coming online. Yeah. So Craigslist coming online is a classical, advertising space for people. So more people were using it online than rather going in the traditional newspapers. So there was a switch in where people got their ads from, which obviously is going to suck the money out of the paper companies. So I'll let you continue.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So once that kind of disintegrated, it's kind of like this the same thing in the music industry with Napster. But if it wasn't Napster, if it wasn't Craigslist or anything like that, somebody would have figured it out. Somebody somewhere would have figured it out. So I don't necessarily blame Mr. Craig, but it was devastating. So as this rolls out, and I'm kind of a witness to all of this because I was in newspapers 2002. Which is right about when everything started falling apart. Then it got particularly bad through the 2008 economic crash. And I started seeing journalists who were trying to do the job of 3 people. And it's impossible to do that. And so when you don't have the time to sit and investigate and make the right calls and things like that, the information becomes even more shallow. I mean, not that it was all correct all of the time forever into the past, but it became more and more difficult to do anything but the ambulance chasing, anything but like, I'll just take this press release that I've received. I don't know how many readers know what press releases are or how that kind of thing
it's kind
works.
of a short version of the story that is circulated to the journalists and to people in the positions of media to see which story they want to pick up on. I'm guessing.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody who is in PR might be somebody who is a professional that is hired by a company who has a particular point of view or a particular, I mean, it could just be a product that they want to announce to the world. Or it could be a particular point of view with a particular angle, with a particular sneaky thing that they send this little press release, this little brief to. It used to be that a journalist would have the time to call them up and to verify and to call somebody else up and see, hey, what's going on? They do not have the time anymore. So sometimes they'll take that press release, which is a shortened version of a news story, and they'll kind of print it verbatim. They'll just copy and paste it and put it in the paper, or now it's the website or whatever. And then when news started to, there's this big split between news being curated and news being democratized. And when news is curated, there's also a trap in that, like, it's usually older white dudes who decide what's newsworthy and what's not.
Yeah.
That's what that used to be. And now it's been democratized, and now it's kind of more like anarchy. News and information anarchy.
Mhm.
So there's a push and pull to all of that. So all right, you've got these journalists who are working skeleton crews. I used to be in uh, the copy editing desk, so I'd be doing grammar stuff. I'd be doing some page layout and things. And I thought when I got into that my job is secure because everybody misspells things all of the time. And now it doesn't even matter.
No.
Now that's like the least of our worries if
Mhm.
a journalist misspells something.
Yeah, totally the least of our worries if something's spelt wrong. It's the headlines that are the problem, let alone the spelling of it.
Yes. And here's the other thing is I part of my job as a copy editor and as a page designer was also writing the headlines. So I would look at some of the standard news articles that would come in through our wire and say, okay, we have this much space in this much space, and what's a headline that could summarize this in this much space?
Mm-hmm.
It leads to a very interesting thing where I could have an article that is something like, Congress passes legislation to protect endangered owls or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I could write that headline, or I could write the headline that says Congress wastes taxpayers' money on stupid owls. I
Mm-hmm.
can absolutely write that headline. When I'm under the pressure of a deadline, my biases are going to come out because it's like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Here's my angle. Here's what this is, and I'm trying to look at it factually and without a bias. It is impossible for humans to not have a bias.
Yeah. Do you want to explain and go further into it what a bias actually is?
Yeah.
Because some people mention that word and people are like, oh.
No,
And I think it's so important for people to know what a bias is.
Yeah. Bias is just, I would say it's, if I were to define it, it's a preconceived notion of any type. It could be a positive bias or a negative bias.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if I were to tell you the world's best lawyer is going to walk in the door right now, you're not going to imagine a purple dragon. So that's a shortcut that your brain makes based off of past information, that you've never seen a purple dragon before, let alone they went through law school.
Mm-hmm.
So your brain takes that shortcut and is like, okay, well, of all of the things that I could be thinking about, a purple dragon is not going to walk through the door as the best lawyer in the world. A 5-year-old is not going to walk through the door as the best lawyer in the world. But if a Black woman comes in and is the best lawyer in the world, now we're starting to see like where people start, like where biases start mattering.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's the brain's shortcut based off of past information. If you've never seen a Black woman be an incredible lawyer, you're not going to think about that almost the same way as you're not going to think about a purple dragon. So we all do have biases because that's the way our brains are wired in order to make sense of the world in some efficient way. Otherwise, I'd be sitting here for hours thinking about all of the different possibilities. What about a pink dragon? What about it? So it is impossible to not have bias. It is better to be aware of them. And it's also better, there is a role in society, I do believe, that there is a role for people who can at least work through and or set aside some bias or call themselves out and think another thought.
Yeah.
That's super important, that our biases aren't just there unchecked or
they're not concrete. They can change at any time.
Exactly. So the journalism industry likes to pretend, or likes to put in our code of ethics to not be biased. And that's fair, and that's a role, and it's also possible
Mhm.
when we're doing the job of 4 journalists
Yeah.
on a deadline, and we got to rapid fire make decisions right now. Am I going to write a headline about the spotted owl, or I'm going to write a headline about taxpayer money?
Mhm.
Reveals our biases.
So I guess it's where your emotion is going to be led strongly. So, for example, if you were saying that there's a great lawyer that's going to walk through the door, and I was automatically thinking that that great lawyer would be a typical white man, and I would think in my head that this is the guy that's going to walk through the door, and then a black woman walks in, my association to a lawyer being a great lawyer might have been a white man in the past. So I would now not necessarily notice the amazing black woman sitting in front of me as a lawyer. And also when you're saying so I just want to break it down really simply, because I think there's a lot of people that talk very intellectually out there at the moment, and I think there's a lot of people who really want to know but just don't understand all of the intellectualism that goes with it. So I just want to make it really simple. And then the other one is obviously when you're pushed for a press release and you're like you're saying you're working one person for 4 jobs, and you're stressed, and you might have had 3 or 4 coffees, and you need a cigarette break, and somebody says, write this headline. If you're angry or emotionally challenged, or you've just received a text message from a partner, or life happens in some way, you're charged, you're writing under a time limit a headline that you're not thinking about fundamentally will have an effect on someone else. You are thinking about what's going to get me done the quickest, and how can I stay out of trouble the most, so you don't swear in it and you don't make it too long. But other than that, you write exactly how you feel in that moment, and that's what a bias is.
Yeah, and it's even more challenging with the fast-paced nature of the internet, which is, like that was kind of my specialty, was like, how do you bring nuance and complexities to these headlines that are flying over everywhere and on the internet that are designed to get people to click. It's always kind of been there. There's an adage in the journalism world: if it bleeds, it leads. That means the most terrible, horrible things that are on fire, that's up top. That's the first headline that you read in our little news package. Now it's the algorithm gets to decide, rather than usually some older white dude curating and making these new news judgments. Now it is an algorithm built by younger-ish white dudes, usually out here in California, that are making these decisions, and it's become more of like I said, it's become democratized, and it's also become like it's information anarchy now. So now it's all about the headline. People actually get their news from headlines and nothing else. They don't even click on the articles or read the whole thing.
Yeah.
They don't see the URL that the story is coming from, and they assume that it's news because it says news.com or whatever it is. So I think, Nat, when we were talking, we had a really interesting conversation about content and context.
That was right, yeah. And I'd said that I'd come up with something called CRD. So I'm no intellectual expert on this subject, but it was running around my brain. I was thinking, CRD, what is that? And for me, it meant context replacement disorder. And context replacement disorder, for me, the way I understood it, is the fact that you may have a news story and there may be some twists in the story. And if you don't know the full context, and context is explaining the outer information around a specific event. So if you don't know the full story and you don't have the correct context, that story can be anything. That scenario can go in any which way possible, depending on who's viewing it. But if you tell the full story and you have the correct context, then nothing can get twisted in the story. And what I feel at the moment is happening is literally context replacement disorder, is the fact that so many newspapers and journalists, for whatever reason, are changing the context of stories to fit a particular narrative that they know is either going to get more clicks, get more hits, or going to further their career in some way, and they don't take accountability into what that's actually doing to the person that's reading it. So we may be reading a story about, this is, I think I explained to you before, which is where you came up with the content replacement, and you'll explain that in a moment. But this is one of the things that really worried me and made me think, why am I being forced to hate someone? So I was looking at the whole situation with Trump, and I don't believe in everything that Trump says. I don't believe that he is the most, how do I say, politically correct person of a political party that we've ever had. And I'm not in the States, but I'm just saying globally. And when he got brought into power, I didn't really know much about him. And I didn't really care that much, but I thought, this isn't great. I'm seeing all these headlines about how brash he is and how rude he is. And, he's a typical arrogant kind of white male guy that most people are trying to get away from, that stereotypical kind of the guys who run the world scenario. Because he's got money, because he's got a bit of power. His story kind of led before he did. And I remember watching something, and it was when he went to Japan, I think it was, and he was with a leader in Japan, and the leader in Japan, they were by a koi carp pond, and they were giving out, they both got a handful of seeds or whatever it was, or fish food, whatever it was. And the leader in Japan was chucking out some fish food flakes into the koi carp, and they were coming up to take it, and then Trump was doing the same, just gently sprinkling them. And then they'd done that a couple of times each, and then the guy from Japan just chucked the rest of the bowl in, just chucked all the rest of the stuff in, and then Trump did his as well. So it was a very simple story. There's nothing crazy going on there. But how the news spun it was that Trump was arrogant and rude, and he didn't respect the Japanese principles. And what he did is that the guy who was there chucking the food, just sprinkling it, then they showed a video of Trump just chucking it in. So he looked like a completely arrogant prick, basically, of the highest order, of somebody that didn't respect a culture, didn't respect the situation, and that was brash. But what I'd seen was the full story. And I sat there and I thought, if this is what they're changing about Trump on a foreign visit with a bag of fish, or sorry, not bag of fish, a pond of fish, that's completely irrelevant, really. They're just showing him in another country, disrespecting it because that's the type of person they want to display him as. What else are they out there displaying him as?
What else are they shortening? Yep.
Exactly. So I didn't want to think that I know this person, because I fundamentally was seeing that I was being told he was a certain person when he wasn't in that particular shot. So it made me question everything else about him. I'm not saying I fully support and believe in what he's doing on every level, but I do believe that I am told to hate him. I am being forced by the media to have a certain narrative about someone that's on the other side of the planet that I've never met, and I won't do that. And it makes other people feel uncomfortable when they're saying, oh, Nat, but Trump's this and Trump's that. And I'm like, but we've never met him. We don't know. And the context around the 90% of his stories are manipulated in such a way for us to believe a certain thing. And that's what gets me annoyed, where I think it's not about Trump, it's about the media. So then you came online, and I'd said about CRD, and this was my understanding of it, and I just made it up. And you then changed it to content and context replacement disorder. So do you want to lead on that as well?
Yeah. Because with content, and this is actually, I do, I'm like very clearly not a Trump fan, and also know how the media works, and know that of course they do that. Of course they shorten it and edit it, and of course they do, because they are in a particular deadline driven environment, and things aren't, it's a both and, like, it's both. Trump knows the media very well. Very, very well. Knows it so well that he knows, like, how to
play it,
manipulate and play and puppetize. And the media is finally realizing, oh, no. We get to be the players. Like, we get to be the puppets. And I do think that, knowing how it works, and also me being not particularly interested, like, throughout all of my media career, I'd never really been interested in that kind of game. I've always been more interested in the in-depth stuff, like let's do some serious shit. let's spend 1 year on one story, that kind of thing. I'll also mention that the investigative reporting outlet that I worked for was a nonprofit because it couldn't have been anything else. In order to invest that amount of time and in depth, the business model is just not there, so it needed to be a nonprofit. So, part of the content replacement is that it is we are seeing the clips. Our brains are being shaped in a certain way that even if somebody did broadcast the full clip or wrote an in-depth article that dug into every nuance, the audience doesn't have the patience for it anymore, which is one of the big problems actually for our investigative reporting outlet and why they ended up changing into like a public radio show. Is because you could, and we had this a lot, you could spend a year on a very important investigation that deals with some really heavy stuff, and since I was the webmaster at the time, some of the stories got like a total of like 300 hits, period. But the thing that we said in the newsroom was like, well, if we get 300 hits, but 5 of them are all connected to the mayor's office or whoever we needed to talk to, well, then our investigations will have impact. Blah, 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 blah. The truth is, that was only 2013, 2014. I think our brains have wired even more to crave the quick hits and the summaries and the edits. And so the news media, because of their business model, gives the public what they want. But I think Jon Stewart said it best. It's like, well, the public also wants hookers and blow. It doesn't mean you have to put a coupon for a hooker and some blow in your newspaper. You don't have to give the public what they want. But the advertising model in the news industry requires it. Like just the very nature of the business model itself requires clicks and eyeballs and sensationalism.
And that's something that we, it's when you were saying that, we crave it. I always think about when this thing about being human is that I don't think humans were born fundamentally bad or like fucked up in any way. I feel that the environment that has been created around us is what's causing us the biggest problem. And the environment is made in such a way that it stimulates us in different areas. And if I'm going to say they, but what I mean right now is they as in the mass media of news and people who are behind that, financially behind that at the moment. Their main thing is clicks and money. And they're not thinking of mental health, the welfare of the nation. They're not thinking of the young person reading all of this news and being, enslaved in all of this trauma. They're not thinking of anything other than the advertising and the advertising space provided and how much they get for that click or whatever it is that they do. Yeah. And this is something that was very clear when Facebook, when we've just seen the thing on Social Dilemma, which I don't know if we spoke before. I think that came out.
We spoke before that, but yeah. Yes, I'd love to talk more about that.
Yeah, that's one of the main things is the fact that I didn't realize. So obviously not having any social media anymore, but now having understood it, I thought because I wasn't clicking on these adverts when I had social media that it wasn't affecting me. I had no idea that they were manipulating content to me in such a way that would keep me online and therefore keep my time online. And then they would sell my time as an advertising space to multiple advertisers relative to what I might have looked at in the past. I didn't know that was the business model. That is 100% flawed and fucked up for us as the user on that platform. They are selling the thing that we cannot get back. They are selling our time. And that's
time, our brain space.
Yeah, time and our brain space. And if you have the way I think about it now is I look at it, and I've said this quite often very recently, is okay, you've got Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter. You've got Pinterest, you've got emails, you've got a WhatsApp, you've got your social life, you've got your neighbors, you've got your parents, you've got your siblings, you've got your friends, you've got everything. On top of all of that, you have your job with its own set of notifications with inside that, because you need to be on to. Then you've also got your thoughts, that we have thousands of them a day. We are constantly stimulated at every single space that we turn into. We are stimulated in some way. Not only that, is that we on this flash of like information. When we go into a room, we turn a light bulb on that is so harmful for our eyes and our energy levels and our sleeping patterns, on top of this complete wave of information that we're going through on a daily basis. And if we're stimulated by the content and all the notifications and the information, emotionally charged from that, because we may have had a text from our best friend that's pissed us off because she can't come out at the weekend. We may have a non-reply from a boyfriend that's causing us to be in anxiety. We may read the news that makes us feel sad about everything that's going on the planet right now. And then we might scroll past something that makes us feel crap about our bodies. No matter where we go, no matter whether it's an iPad, an iPhone, an Android, a laptop, a desktop, or whatever it is that you're looking at, all of our life, every single part of it is for sale.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not making money. When I'm not saying for sale from us that we're making money from. If you're an influencer, you're even more screwed, because you literally have your life tied into that and your money tied into that. But our life is for sale to someone else. And when you get an article through on your phone and you open it up, that person who sent it to you has just decided what they want you to do with your time. And if you open that article, you open up that time of space for them. And it might be an interesting article, but you consistently do that. You're available to everyone else other than yourself. And there is zero healing that can be done on an internal basis when you are that readily available for other information. And let alone if all of that is on a standard day to day before the pandemic. Now we have all of that and a pandemic and a political shitstorm.
And a political shitstorm. There's so much in that I just really resonated with, because I have made a very conscious decision. Well, when I first stepped out from journalism, and I mentioned that I also did marketing, I specialized in Facebook ads. And the reason, yes, I still can help people if they really need it, but I really don't want to. That's not what I want on my epitaph, because because of everything that you said, is because I became more and more concerned. Even when I was doing it, I would still be like, well, okay, Facebook is a monopoly. How can you manage it? It's a pay to play game. If you want to play the game, then here are some rules so you don't end up wasting more money down to Mark Zuckerberg's pocket. The more I started realizing and being like, knowing that I was playing the game and the game was rigged and it's kind of a disgusting little game, the more I stopped being, just like you said, like, just because somebody asked me for their attention doesn't mean I have to give it to them. Just because somebody texted me, and sorry to anybody who's waiting for a text from me, I may not be immediately
double tick, like, why are they not replying?
I think I might have an email that I still need to get back to her too. Yeah. So the more, so the pandemic plus political shitstorm plus all this stuff that's been building forever. I do think though that people are finally like, oh, I have more time on my hands to think and sit and to ponder things because of the pandemic. That's also probably why the political shitstorm is happening, because we all started realizing, oh my God, the game is really rigged and we're so fed up. Yeah, really. So there was also something that you mentioned that really resonated, particularly around the social dilemma and the fact that all of our lives are really up for sale. Fun-ish fact, I guess. I actually know Tristan Harris, because the Bay Area there's this Venn diagram of news nerds and startup nerds and digital nerds.
Mm-hmm.
And there's in the Bay Area, and there's a little tiny circle there, and he ran some of those circles when he was with Apture before he got bought out by Google.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with another nonprofit news organization. For some reason, I keep being drawn to nonprofit news organizations, but it's called the San Francisco Public Press, and it was also a startup. And yeah, we connected through there. So it was very interesting to see Social Dilemma. I'm like, hey, I know that guy. But also knowing that he comes from the same kind of moral, ethical places that I came from, and why I care about quality information is the same reason why he cared about quality information. And realizing that, I watched that movie. It probably came out only a month or so ago.
Yeah.
And I watched it, and that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, essentially. Like I knew some of it. It wasn't 100% new to me, but it framed it in a way that made it very real, particularly listening to like the president of Pinterest will not allow his kids to be on Pinterest.
Yeah.
That in and of itself was like, I need to be.
And that's the least addictive one.
Yes.
Yeah.
That really called out to me, like, I cannot play this game anymore. I can't continue to advise. Now, I do sometimes advise like artists and activists and other journalists and people on how to use the Facebook platform, because if crap is going to be online, might as well there to be something good that flows into the news feed. But on a whole, I can't have that be the only egg in my basket. I can't do that anymore. So I've actually turned more into songwriting and more into creativity and more into teaching, collaborating in things that make me feel more human, like being human right there. That gets me away from the algorithm. And it's really also interesting that in a lot of my songs, I've written a whole bunch over the years, and as I'm looking over them and seeing what ends up being interesting to me that I want to like gravitate towards, it's this feeling of being wired myself. Like, what am I programmed to do, and how are they programming me, and how am I reprogramming myself? And that ends up being a huge theme in a lot of the things that I didn't even realize until I looked at my work in that light, in that angle. And my whole tagline has always really been, and the reason that I was really drawn to what you were up to is because with Little Spiral, which is my superhuman name, my superhero stage name, the tagline was always, I wanted to explore what it meant to be human in an increasingly digital world. And everything about what I do comes down to that, whether it's like storytelling, whether it's teaching, whether it's music, whatever it is. And the big piece of the puzzle that was just like the square peg in a round hole was this marketing business. And I was drawn to marketing because I wanted people to feel seen. I wanted that's the underlying thing of marketing. And I also care a lot about business models, because like both the journalism industry that I'm a part of and the music industry are fucked with the old school business model. And so it takes some creativity to make something sustainable out of these very human things like storytelling and information sharing and music. But I think I'm still very passionate about, I'm no fan of capitalism in general, But commerce has been around, like capitalism has only been around for a couple hundred years, right? But commerce has been around since the dawn of civilization. And it makes more sense to rethink all that. But I'm not the expert on capitalism versus anything. I'm the blue-haired nerd that writes songs and complains about journalism.
Blue-haired nerd. It's fine. Well, do you know, we had a very good chat when we first spoke, and it was off the bat. We just ended up chatting, and the energy there for me. And this is it. It's about being human. It's not who you are or what you look like. It's if you breathe. Welcome to the club.
Welcome to.
Hello, you breathe. I want to talk to you. And we ended up having a really good chat. And it's obvious, especially from the music industry perspective, which is also where I come from, in the sense of I have a very clear understanding about how DJs and producers and so on work, not necessarily artists and singing, but just essentially from DJs, electronic dance music scene, living in Ibiza. A lot of these DJs have been under pressure for so long. And they've been forced to, by their labels, by their agents, by their managers, to stick to one thing and be a brand. And it's very much this key person of influence, which is an amazing book if anybody's not read it. It teaches you how to be a key person of influence in your particular area. And if you have a brand and you need to go out there and exist online, you need to have that consistency so people know what you're about. So creative people that change their mind all the time get put in this pigeonhole box, and they are told to create this particular type of music because people say, well, what do you play? What do you do? And I need to know, because we want to put people in boxes. And with our annoying habit of wanting to put people in boxes, pisses all over someone's creativity all the time. And we don't give them the freedom to just express themselves and be themselves. And I don't know if you remember when Avicii played, when he brought out his track that was completely different to everything else he'd ever done. Everyone was slating him for bringing out something that was so cheesy. He wanted to do that. He spent time creating something and wanted to be loved just as he wanted to be loved before, and wanted to put that out there. Everybody went nuts for it on the dance floor, but a lot of other musicians also hated him for it and couldn't stand that he'd done that. And whether you're an agent, you can blame your agent, you can blame your manager, you can blame your label. But if you have judgments on other artists for not consistently sticking to what you think they should stick to or do what you think they should do, you're just as bad as the label, the manager, or the agent. Our judgments, regardless of whether you sit as an artist or as somebody that controls an artist or as somebody that is involved with an artist, the key part of that entire creation is creativity. And if you are pulling someone down for their creative output, you are cutting everything that is them down. And that's an awful place to be in when that's being happened to. But it's also, if you're doing it to them, it's going to happen to you. And it's this cycle that we perpetuate that not many people realize, that they'll blame the industry, they'll blame the business model, they'll blame the labels, they'll blame whatever it is. I'm all about personal responsibility. If you can start looking at your life in every single area of your life and say, well, what do I need to clean up? What do I need to work on? What do I need to stop doing so I can stop perpetuating that cycle? That for me is where a lot of this needs to really change in order to change anything that we've discussed on today. The individual journalist that sat at her desk thinking, right, I need a fag. I had loads of drinks last night. I need to get these bits of information out there. I don't care where it goes. She has a personal responsibility to not be up all night drinking and getting wasted, so she takes her sorry ass to work and feeling shit. She also needs to think about like the incessant need to smoke and get away from her feelings. That's also going to add agitation, because she's got a responsibility in that very small moment, sat at that desk thinking that she may have a meaningless life, that she's about to put something out that's going to affect maybe thousands, maybe millions. And I don't want to blame the system anymore, because the system's not broken. It never has been broken. It's not designed for everyone to thrive, but it's not broken because it works perfectly for those at the top. And those at the top rely on us not taking personal responsibility in that very small position. And it's this where we come down to this very small bit where we have the power in every moment of our day to change, to choose a path. If we choose the wrong one, it might have immediate gratification, but it has long-term disadvantages for us and for other people. And we don't see that until we've perpetuated the problem. It's like when you're putting on weight. You keep having the eclair and you keep having the cake and you keep having the pizza. Slowly, the problem will emerge. And I don't know if you see it in the sense of, do you believe it's at all possible, from what you've seen and you working in your particular industry and around those people, do you believe that it's possible for everyone in a newsroom to collectively take personal responsibility within the moment, within their job, to produce something better and of quality? Or do you think that's completely impossible?
Oh, that's a great question, because there's, in some ways, there's an interplay with the system and the individual. The system cannot exist without the individual, right? And I'm thinking back to like Social Dilemma, where I don't remember if it was in the movie, if I just listened to it on Tristan's TED Talk, but he was like, there was a point where I truly believed that we could change it from the inside, and then realized, oh, actually, no. But here's the thing. He still believed that change could happen, and therefore a movie is out, and now we're all talking about it.
Yeah, exactly. The
So,
awareness.
yes, and I think it's that back and forth between us as a collective and us as individuals. And we've always had that, like, tossing and turning and plugging and pulling. It's about it, and it brings back that conversation we're having about bias. We need to be aware of our place in the system and our power in order to change it. If we keep rallying against this invisible system, we're going to run ourselves down, because it ain't going to budge until we realize we are the system. It's like, it's like you're never stuck in traffic. You are the traffic.
Yeah. It's such an amazing sentence to say, especially related to this subject, because, you know, when I first heard that, like, you're not stuck in traffic, you are the traffic. I was like, oh,
no, right.
Oh, and, you know, you don't really want to be the traffic. You're like, oh, I am the problem. Okay, cool. But it's when because the reason I asked that question is because I think to myself, it's like what Einstein says with you can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness in which it was created. And you have to create something new. And I think to myself sometimes, do we all abandon the current media that we have? Do we all just drop ship, jump and say, see you later, we're not involved in that anymore? Would that work? Or do we have this global shift in awareness where we're like, Janet on reception at the council realizes that her true power while she's on the reception at her local town hall council has the responsibility to actually notice what's being shoved under her nose and passed on to the next person? Are we relying on the Janets of the world to wake up and to be like, oh, okay, I have a power to, this doesn't feel right to me. Should this, does this, important bit of paper need to go to this person, or does it actually need to go to someone higher? Because I think to myself, if you really put yourself in the position, I mean, I don't know any really happy council workers. I just don't. And I don't know if that's a thing, out there. I don't know any fundamentally truly happy council workers. And I'm not saying that they're not happy. I don't want to discriminate against anybody. And if you are out there, tap me up and say, hi, I'm a happy council worker. I'll be very happy for you. But I've never met one. And what I feel is that if you think about this Janet that's on reception, or whoever this person is, they have a job that they might not necessarily love or like. They have a life that they might be struggling with. They may be overweight, or they may be feeling like they want more connection. They don't have it. They may be feeling like they want a partner and they don't have one. Or they might have kids and they might be having a really hellish time, and they might have no one to talk to, and their neighbor might be a problem. And all of their personal problems, are huge factors in their life. And they go to work between the hours of 9 and 5 and are told that they need to do an efficient job, and they get paid not very much, and they don't get treated very well. And it's a pretty stale environment, and it's not enthused. It's not like you're working in the Google offices and everything's like available and fun. They're working in pretty awful rundown buildings most of the time. And you or you might have an amazing idea for your local council. So off you go, you write up a report with your enthusiasm and you're like, yes, I can change the world. This is going to be great. Makes all the sense, makes financial sense. And you're skipping down to the town hall and you go into your council space and you give Janet, the pissed off receptionist that's really annoyed with life, your enthusiastic bit of paper. Yeah. And your enthusiasm flies through that door and she's like, oh, and she can't be asked because life's at her. And she takes your bit of paper and you're like, great, when will I hear back? And she's like, when someone contacts you, and just shifts it along. And you think, oh, and you go away with all the hope and expectation and the joy out of your new creative idea. And you hope that it gets to the top of the tree. And you've just given it to someone who doesn't care, doesn't share your enthusiasm, doesn't want to know, can't be bothered, and will not go out of her way. If she can leave half an hour early, she'll go. If that bit of paper goes missing, it goes missing. And this is where people say about the system when they say, there's a lot of error out there. I think we're dealing with way more error than we are conspiracy. And I feel like there's a lot of conspiracies out there that people will talk about. And I think not all of them are conspiracy theories. A lot of them are just bloody good questions that people haven't got answers to. And that's what we need. But I think there's a lot more error out there that we're dealing with than anything else. And obviously you working in this environment of working for the papers, you will have seen in your job the different roles. You're walking around doing your different job every day and you're seeing everyone in that business. So you get to see everyone. You get to see their moods. You get to see their job role. Who is enthusiastic in that office? Are they all collectively zinging and can't wait to get the press out, or are they all super stressed?
I actually, you mentioned, it's definitely, it's less conspiracy and more error. It's not like all of media has a meeting on Friday and talks about how I literally wrote a poem about exactly that. Can I read just a second?
Yeah, go for it.
A second? Okay. I don't know how much I can do. Okay. The poem is literally called The Friday 9 a.m. Media Meeting.
Okay, go for it.
I used to work in the media, and every Friday at 9 a.m., we all had a secret meeting, all of us, to decide what we were going to fool the public that day. And when I say everyone, I mean everyone. You mean when you speak of the media, CNN, Fox News, New York Times, and all Wheatley's, local stations, all the glossies, the L's and the 17s, but also Time Magazine, National Geographic. They don't usually fraternize with the teeny boppers, but here we are. Major movie studios, major record labels, don't forget the advertisers. We could all fit into one room because of all the downsizing. But anyway, we were all there every week, and at 9 a.m., we decided how we were going to fool the public to skew us in our own collective best interests. But there was no one best interest in the room. The movie folks were not returning the journalist calls all week. The glossy magazines had some infighting over who stole whose cover. The music industry had to call in sick most weeks. Shepard Smith and Wolf Blitzer both got caught up in a fist fight, and someone was passing out fake meeting agendas. Facebook, I guess, got invited somehow, though they don't have any media credentials. Oh, and Twitter found the address and tagged along through the back door. Instagram paparazzi snuck in to catch a rare photo of our famously reclusive CEO, Mr. Zeitgeist, just to prove he wasn't a complete figment of our collective imaginations. Then, one year, bloggers unionized, and they were angry they weren't invited, so they staged a strike outside our no longer super secret 9 a.m. meeting where important things were supposed to get done. Yeah, it was a big, fat mess. It was a lot easier when only a few older white men in the room who were well paid to have official agendas printed up on off-white linen paper and scripts handed out to all the news outlets of exactly how they were going to fool the public that week. And for each script, they hid behind the pen name Mr. Zeitgeist, so no one would ask questions about who was in those Friday 9 a.m. media meetings.
Oh, so you've covered it all. I love that. Well done. That's actually really clever. I really like that. And that's what I think about. You've literally encapsulated what I think about so often. And I just think it not everything is a conspiracy theory. It really isn't. I know we love the drama and we know that there's things out there. Some things are screwed and some things are mistakes and some things just happen and then some things are really fucked up. And
Mhm.
collectively, what we have now from that large scale is a bloody big problem. And
Mhm.
we have a really dark, because this is something I always think when people talk about conspiracy theories, the very easily quick thing that they get to is that they go down this dark kind of pedophile agenda, satanic thing. And whether or not that's happening, I am not the person to say yes or no.
Right. Right.
No one is. No one knows in the way that, we would like to think we do. However, I do think one thing is that when you start asking questions about our world and you start waking up about what's going on and you start sniffing around and scratching into information, everybody, no matter who you are, gets to that story when they go looking. If there was a different ending to that story, everyone would love it and they would choose it. But unfortunately,
Mhm.
you start scratching, you end up there. So it leads people to ask questions that have yet to be answered, which is why people think that there's this situation, and there could well be, and we don't know. But to argue within ourselves and to kick off at someone for being a conspiracy theorist when all they're doing is asking questions about some really good questions that haven't got answers, I think is
Mhm.
the most childish thing that we can do, and it divides us. And it's the same as race and gender and politics and conspiracy theories and religion. These things are used to divide us, and we literally get divided quicker than just chucking a pack of cards at the wall all
Mhm.
over the place.
Interesting. Yeah.
And we do it to ourselves because we don't stick around long enough to unite and have conversations and communicate in the right way.
And a lot of people and I'm definitely feeling you on that because I'm here and I am a proud I absolutely support like Black Lives Matter and things like that. And I think when we sit down with people who don't agree and say, what's the story behind that? What's
Mhm.
the story behind how you came to that conclusion? Because I know if I was born in a different part of the country with different parents, a different upbringing, and saw different things, I know I would probably be in those exact same shoes in that exact situation with those exact conclusions. And
Mhm.
so while it's become very hard to talk to people because people I also I will also say there's trauma response, right?
Yes.
When people start talking about race, we are talking about centuries of trauma on all all sides. And so people get really frustrated and
Mhm.
really angry, and a lot of that anger is righteous, and it can't continue to be like, well, we'll just wait for all the other people to die off in order to get our way. Like that is not a solution. That's not a path towards healing. That's not even a path towards activism. That's like
It's a
that's
joke.
it's writing human beings off as the evil. It's this othering that we're talking about. It's very difficult to have those conversations with people that don't agree with us when everybody is in their trauma response and like you were saying can't it's that personal responsibility plus there's all sorts of things happening at the same time. I will say I know I have personal responsibility in uncovering my own biases, right?
Mm.
Purple dragon walking through the door. I also know that it's impossible for me to understand in every single bias that I have, every single bias that we have, every single bias that humans have. And so I rely on talking to other people who don't think like me in order to uncover those. And, but there's also this thing about um, um, don't believe in everything you think is important. And also, me having gone through this twice, where there's a whole other subject of me leaving Mormonism. I was born and raised in Mormonism. I'm not going to get into that. But realizing that everything that I knew was wrong in certain contexts also made me not trust myself at all.
Yeah.
So there's a balance of understanding, like, I can't believe everything I think, and also I might have some good ideas in there. I don't know.
There might be a few of them wandering around. I think you've got some great ideas, because I love what you wrote and some of the other things that we've had conversations about. And I hardly know you, and we just literally connected on the other side of the world. You're in the States, I'm in England, and we ended up having a chat about the media, which has united us, and it's divided so many people. But we are comfortable as two women to be able to talk about things, and we might not hit it off in exactly the same way in all of our thoughts, but we're giving each other the space to communicate and to connect. And for me, that is so important, that we allow that. And I think that's why 2021 is about, the day we found our voice. It's kind of the year we found our voices, is what I'm putting out there. And it's when you learn about the voice, you understand the silence is just as powerful as your words. And giving someone the opportunity to say what they want to say without actually chucking yourself into them and into that conversation until they finish is a skill which most people don't have. And I still learn it. Sometimes I'm agreeing with someone so much. I'm like, yeah. Because I want to say what I want to say, because I know this too. And it's my ego wanting to get out there. And it's like, nah, shut up. Just shut up, because you don't have to say something right now. So when I learned to shut up, it was the biggest gift I think I could have given myself. Also, many other people that I know. Learning to shut up for a bit was so important, because I managed to sit and learn. And this is why I say, when people are saying, talk about books, you can read so many books and you can have so much education from other people's books. You are void of your own opinion, because you're learning constantly all the time. But at the same time, you start reading books, you're quiet and you're taking in that information, because no one's disrupting you. You never have a go at the author. Even if that book tells you and makes you realize that you're a complete idiot and you're fundamentally wrong in most of your views, you don't call up the author and have a go at them. You're like,
well, sometimes.
No. I never have. But you're like, oh, you take that responsibility, because you've sat in the silence and you've got nowhere else to go. And it's this important way of learning that I think now is, the world's so noisy everywhere you look, and we don't spend enough time in silence. And we are so emotionally charged. We want to respond to everything that we see. But at the same time, when we're involved in everything we see, we get sick. And we're in this mess. And I really do, value someone like yourself coming on to talk to me about the media and telling me your what you're seeing in your job role, because it's these conversations that we need to have, because it's people like you that can give other people an insight into what journalism is and why it might be like it is. And that takes away some of the monumentous level of confusion that we have at the moment, where we just don't know why things are the way that they are, and we don't want to think that they're as bad as what we think they are. But you can say, we can't blame everyone, but everyone's got a role to play collectively in responsibility. And that's the thing that's void: personal responsibility on a personal level.
I do think there's a lot of inner work, and I agree with that. I think there's like a big gradient, and to make any sort of change for the better, we have to take on personal responsibility. I also know that there's people who see the argument for personal responsibility as absconsing or what's a better word for that, like ignoring systemic issues. And it's an interplay. I think it's a gradient of, here we cannot take either out of the equation, because the system is people, and people are like, we're social creatures. We're built that way. Again, me with the building and the how we're programmed and things, but we're programmed to be one with the community, and the way that we've built communities is these systems. We do need to take that personal responsibility, otherwise we'll just be crushed.
Yeah. No, we will.
And And it's the inner work. And I do see, like, I have purposefully stepped away from, like, more Facebook headlines and things like that, just because I know it's all sensationalism. I know because I've seen how the whole system is headed,
Mm.
and I also know that there there is a responsibility for me to be informed in some cases, and there's also a responsibility for me to be whole and complete and not self-destruct over every single anger-inducing headline, because
Mm.
that is no way to live. And that even if you do care about certain things and are angry, there's room for righteous anger. And if you're going to live there, if you're going to pitch a tent in anger
Right.
and live there forever, I don't know if that's the world we want to build. No, it
And those
isn't. I know that it's not the world.
and those people are trying to share information because they care and they want the world to change. And it's very difficult because without those people in those positions sometimes we might not know what we need to know.
Mhm.
So there is that space in there, but I think what we all need to do is to do us first collectively. And if we can do it collectively all together at the same time, in a way which I've thought of, which I won't go into now, but I'll probably have you back on at some point to talk about
Yeah.
a kind of I've basically developed a global game that we can all play at the same time, which is about taking personal
Oh.
responsibility. And I want to launch it in 2021, sorry. Um, but I feel like if we all did that work. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to do lifetimes of work. You could just do it collectively and kind of all understand each other's role and get that sympathy and that connection with each other again and the community back and grow together. Just in a small part, the energy of that small group then takes hold and you can actually do more with that and things can be done on a global scale. But if we don't start taking personal responsibility collectively,
Collectively.
I don't know any other way that we can get out of this. And if there is a
Mhm.
conspiracy, then this time next year we'll all be in a very shitty position.
Yeah.
And it could be the 5G ranked up. It could be that we're all still on lockdown or we're all with some kind of vaccine and giving Bill Gates, so our exact
Yeah.
location wherever we go.
Yeah.
I don't know what the future holds, and I don't want to think it's that dark. But I do know that what's bright is today. I can make today bright. I can make now bright. I can do make a choice in my life that makes it slightly better than it was before. And if I can keep staying in that brightness and that lightness, then I can create a brighter future. But if I don't make those
Yeah.
changes today, I've got zero
Yeah.
chance of improving my future.
We won't make it through. There's another song that I wrote that's just, we have to recharge the heart with love. If we won't make it through if we don't. And it's we cannot wait to be happy and fulfilled until all of the things are fixed. We can't. We will destroy
That's a
ourselves
really long
first.
wait, right? It's like,
Yes, that will be a very long wait. It'll be generations and generations.
well, I love the fact that you've ended like on that we have to charge the heart, recharging the heart. Like we do our phones every night, we plug it into the wall. We
Yes.
have to charge ourselves. We could take a leaf out of Apple's book and Android's book and get ourselves plugged in to the matrix or plugged out from the matrix. But I just want to say, I won't go on too much longer there because we've gone over the hour, but I truly value you coming on. Thank you so much. And I've loved talking to you.
Yes, thank you.
And it's always a pleasure having conversations with people that really do, that are willing to open up about I'm going to say, and I don't mean this in a patronizing way, their small part in society that can help other
Mm.
people on a collective scale see what that role entails to help them get a better understanding. Because I think people hate the idea of journalism right now. And what did this media do to us? But people like yourself or people who have other roles similar to yours are just trying to do their life. And I think a
Mhm.
snapshot into someone like yourself and what you do is, we're all doing our little bit. That's all we can do.
Mhm.
And thank you
Mhm.
so much for sharing that because it
Yeah.
matters.
Yes, thank you for having me. I loved this conversation. And always, You want to talk deep philosophical, political, random shit? I'm always down.
I'm so up for that. Everybody that knows me are like, oh God, Nat, I live in that world, but I try not to just stay there too much. I try to like make light out of it and bring it, but now I'm bringing it on air more. But thank you so much. So if anybody wants to hear your music or your poems and stuff, where can we find more about you?
Yes, littlespiral.com. I actually have a free EP if anybody wants it. It's at freemusic.littlespiral.com, and I'll send you stories and have some chats and some bonus tracks that aren't on Spotify. I've got a few tracks on Spotify as well. You can look me up there. But if you go to freemusic.littlespiral.com, I've got some extra goodies for you.
Thank you so much. You are a star, and I'll talk to you off air when this goes on. But if anybody else that's listening, you have been listening to Being Human. My name is Nat Rich, and this is a project that I started not so long ago about all the parts of the world I have connected to that I wanted to bring out on a mass scale. I want to show people what it really truly means to be human and what we can do and how we can change collectively what's going on the planet. And it does start with a bit of discipline, I'm afraid. Sorry about that. Sorry, but it starts with discipline. This is me being a personal responsibility coach, but discipline doesn't have to be miserable. It can be really fun at the same time. If you're disciplined and you can commit to something you love, you create something magical. So if you want to hear anything else from me, you can go to where'snatat.com, and I'll actually, do you know what? I've got a little banner. Let me see if I've got my banner. Let me see, where is it?
Ooh, fancy.
I don't know, actually. I did have a banner. Let me just put it here. Where's Nat at? I should have had all this prepared. I thought I had. Where's Nat at? There you go. This is my banner. Where's Nat at.com. Ta-da!
She's right there. I found her.
There you go. She's there. See her here as often as possible. So thank you so much. And any questions, just let me know. Drop them in the comments, and we will see you on the next one. Bye for now.
Bye.